Welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Dr. Terra DeFoe. Of course, I am your host, Dr. Terra DeFoe, and my special guest today is Mena Davis. Yay! Mena Davis is no stranger to the Grant Foundation fundraising family. So, Mena, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us, what do you do?
Well, I am a grant writer by trade. I've been doing this close to 25 years, and I'm only 29.
See?
But that's okay.
Yep.
But I just, I love grant writing. Grant writing is really about telling a good story,
Yes.
providing good stats, good demographics, and I always love to tell a good story. So grant writing is always been a good thing for me. It's allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to work with a lot of individuals, and most importantly, it's allowed me to bring a lot of funding right here to our community.
Yes.
So I'm excited to share information. I always tell people this is not my information.
Yes.
I was blessed that God allowed me to be in places where I could collect this information, and I love to share it.
And when we talk about, sharing the information, it becomes that conversation of, how do we share the information so that people can, gather their selves together, like I said, grant readiness, grant preparedness. How do we do that? So want to start off with what is grant readiness and grant preparedness?
Well, most importantly, it is dotting your I's and crossing your T's. It is reading an application to determine what the eligibility requirements are. And it is first and foremost making sure your organization has all of the tools and all of the required documents. There's about 11 required documents that you must have even before you read an application. And so as
what are three basic ones?
Three basics one are, well, you must have your 501c3 if you're pursuing federal applications.
Okay.
If you're doing, and now most foundations and locals all require you to have an active 501c3. You must have a DUNS number.
Okay.
And you must have an active or usable EIN number.
Okay.
Without those three things, you can't even log into the systems.
Wow.
And everything now is online, and the online process takes you about 6 weeks to even register. And the first thing they ask you is enter your EIN number, your DUNS number, and upload your 501c designation.
Wow. So if you can't even get past them three, you
Right,
done.
right. And I found, just yesterday I was on Dollar General site, and Dollar General was just giving away $3,000 towards literacy. And not only did they want your 501c designation letter, they wanted audited financials. And
Wow, for $3,000?
For $3,000.
That's a lot of work.
It is, but I think they want organizations to be accountable for the
Yes.
money that they give them, and the way that you be able to determine if you're accountable is, have you audited your financials, and if you haven't, have you submitted a 990? And a 990 is a simple postcard. It's a simple form that you could fill out, even if you're not to the point where you can have audited financials. Do your 990s. I cannot tell you how many nonprofits say, "Oh, I didn't even make that much money last year."
And then they don't do it,
that
and then they
document.
get revoked after so many years.
After
The
3
IRS,
years,
after
they
3
do
years, the
revoke
IRS send you that nice friendly letter saying
Yes.
you've been revoked.
Yes.
You talked about the before you talked about the 990, the audit. A lot of people will hear that word and cringe. And people need to realize you can just do an audit just to make sure that your affairs are in order. You don't have to be ordered
Yes.
or demanded to have an audit.
Yes.
You can just do one to make sure, to improve the financial status of your
Exactly.
organization.
And the good thing about it is there is so many. If you're a small nonprofit, say you're doing less than $50,000 a year, it would cost you probably about $800 to go to an auditor and take him all of your documents and have him
Wow.
produce an audit statement. And that's if you're less than $50,000. The cost usually goes up if you're more than $50,000. However, there's great software, QuickBooks. There's a few other softwares that you can input the same information, print out some financials, take them to a CPA, and just have him write you a letter that says, I reviewed these statements, I've looked at her receipts, I've looked at the balances of this organization, and it appears that they are doing business according to general accounting principles.
Okay.
And that's really what funders want to know is, are you doing things in the correct process, and are you instead of taking that $3,000 and buying you a new little
Come
beach
on.
body or car
Come
or
on.
paying some car notes, you are taking those dollars and putting it back into that charitable organization
Yes.
that you told the federal government and that funder you would utilize those dollars for. And that's really all the funding resource wants to know.
And that's important because one, funders talk.
Yeah, all the
so, funders, if you messed up with one funder, they would tell another funder, I didn't have a good experience with that organization. And your grant comes across the grant review committee and they already have in mind that you're not a good agency.
And that's what the purpose, people always ask me, well, what is the purpose of a DUNS number? A DUNS number is really like your social security, is where they store your credit information. And it's really, if you have a grant that's recaptured because you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or if there's any type of financial issues, it shows up under your DUNS number.
Wow.
It's really like your credit score.
Wow.
So you can think, oh, well, we didn't use the money properly. They didn't take it back. But however, those notes show up. And when you go to get another grant, that's why they all request your DUNS number so that they can read that profile and be able to have a clear picture of how you do business.
Wow.
So people think that just because, they didn't take the money back or we didn't file a report or, we got the money and
somebody is still tracking that
Exactly.
information.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, that is something. What are a few common mistakes organizations make when writing a grant?
First, it's not reading the application.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do I write grants, I'm also a grant reviewer.
Yes.
I spent several years working in Washington, D.C., working for federal agencies reviewing grants. Every time an agency puts out a grant application, they provide a matrix for how they're going to score that application. Mm-hmm. If you follow that matrix, if you read that application, if you do everything according to the application, you have a better chance of being funded. And often that's not what they do. Some people will send me an application and ask me to review it, and it'll be missing whole sections. Oh, well, we weren't sure what that meant. Well, you can't omit the information because you weren't sure. So I think that is the biggest thing that I see is they don't read the application. And sometimes applications throw something tricky in here. This was something that I saw a couple years ago. They went to tell the individuals that you had to use Times Roman 12 double space. And they don't read that, and they send an application in there with Calibri body 10 font because they want to get more information. They didn't double space it, and then they want to know why they weren't funded.
Wow.
So you really have to read the directions, apply the information, and then when you don't know, ask somebody. One thing that I practice when I'm writing or preparing to write a grant is reading
reading the eligible portion, and I highlight. So I just, go and highlight all of the things that I need to remind myself of what is going to be asked throughout this grant.
Yes.
And then I begin a checklist from there to say, okay, this is my checklist for myself, and then this is the checklist for the organization.
Yes.
And in that way, I can keep myself balanced and making sure that I, at the end, I'm able to pull all the documents together and I'm able to do the things that is called in the grant to do. Like you said, the 12 font. That's something you probably want to circle to make sure you remember.
My little system is I buy those little tabs. I print an application, and on every page where it's something that needs to go into the grant, I put a blue tab. When it's something that needs to go in the submission process, maybe I need to apply here, or maybe I need to register here, I put a red tab. When it's an attachment that I have to attach, I need to get a support letter. If I need to get something notarized, I put a yellow tab. I read an application at least 3 times before I even say, let me sit down and write. Because you can read one sentence one way, and 2 days later say, oh, wait, that's what they're saying. You know?
And so it takes a skilled grant writer to pick that up.
Often it does. And those little things that you miss will lose you a couple points in that scoring process.
Wow. What if a organization have multiple programs and multiple services? What would you recommend the best way for them to start looking at funding opportunities?
Well, so one of the things that I've learned in working with organizations that run a multitude of programs is you have to have a staff buy-in. I have worked with executive directors who's just like, no, my staff doesn't need to be here. Give me a reading, a writing, arithmetic, a STEM,
Wow.
I want a grant for all of those. But unless I meet with those staff individuals who are running those programs, writing those grants are useless because I'm writing things that I don't even know if you can actually deliver.
Right.
So part of that is when you have multiple programs, you sit down as a team and you prioritize those programs, and then you look at the funding resource. If you're going to spend 16 hours writing a $1 million grant that can cover 5 programs versus spending 8 hours asking for $125,000
Right.
just for a literacy program. So as an organization, you have to prioritize your funding. You have to figure out what are the funding resources looking for. If you do a program that teaches kids to paint sidewalks in the rain and nobody's funding that, let's figure out if we can then find a grant that just teaches kids who play in the rain.
Right.
You have to sometimes be creative. And then if they don't fund it, then maybe as a board and organization, you might want to say, well, maybe this program is not going to be able to be something that we can do this year. Maybe we have to do it next year, and maybe we incorporate those same skill sets into another program.
Right.
So but the biggest thing that I see is when you don't have the staff buy-in.
Wow.
And
And not having the staff buy-in, these are the people who are running the program. So when you get the funding, these are the individuals who have to meet with clients. They have to go get the kids.
Yes.
They have to write the curriculum. So
Yes.
if you're not talking to them, then you don't know what their needs are. They may say something totally different than what, the CEO may want to
Yes.
present to you. But having the staff buy-in is going to be very critical. What is the difference between an RFP, request for proposal, and a LOI, which is a letter of interest? A lot of people kind of don't understand what is the difference.
And what people don't do is they don't put the time and energy into LOIs. The LOI is a letter of intent, letter of interest. So what happens is oftentimes a funding source only has so many dollars. Say they only have $10 million, but last year's funding cycle they had $40 million in requests. And so sometimes they want to whittle those down and only concentrate on applications instead of having to read all of those applications. They only want to read applications that are applicable to what they're trying to fund, and they want to ensure that organizations are doing that. So the letter of intent is important because what you're doing is outlining the exact program, the exact demographics, the exact deliverables, the exact measurables that you would put into a major application in a 1-page document or sometimes a 2-page document. And so that requires you to sit down and have some forethought. You really have to think about that application. You really have to think about what can we do? How can we measure it? What are our benefits? What are our results? And then how can we put that in just a few paragraphs? And that's really what that is. And once you submit that in, they then take those letters of intent and kind of wheedles it down and say, hey, this application is going to give us everything that we want to fund. Because the one thing that people forget is that for every funding resource, that funding resource has to report back either to the government,
Yes.
to the stockholders,
Yes.
to the family or the endowment. And nobody wants to go and say, hey, I gave the Little Red Riding Library 25 books and they only gave one kid a book.
Right.
They want to say, I gave them 25 books. They gave them to 25 children who then increased their reading scores by 2 grade levels.
Exactly.
And so having an LOI that ensures a foundation and an organization that this program is going to deliver a result that you can take back to whoever it is that's signing the checks are organizations that they're then going to say, submit a full application back to us.
Right.
If you're not clear on it and you can't articulate it, they're going to say, we just going to leave this right here and let's go on to an organization that has gone through that thought process.
And how important is it to make sure that you write a grant or RFP or letter of intent or interest? How the language, do you want to go writing a dissertation,
Yeah.
or do you want to keep it common? How does that work?
So
Because
our
you have so
rule-
many,
yeah, our rule of
educated
thought-
people.
oh my goodness! I remember when I was reviewing the application a couple years ago, and it was written by someone who I'm sure is quite esteemed in academia, but I could not understand every other word.
Wow.
And I'm the reviewer. I'm supposed to review and score your application, and I'm literally like, somebody find me a dictionary, because this is, I don't understand. I usually try to tell individuals, write it on an 8th grade level. Okay, a well-written 8th grade level application can describe what it is that you're wanting to do. It can speak to anybody who's reading it, and you don't know who's reading it. When you write these applications, they take people from all over the country.
Yes.
And so you don't know who's reading your application and what their background experience is.
Right.
You want them to be able to take out the things that you are trying to pursue, or the things that you're trying to convince them that you're going to do, and have an understanding about it. So I say always write grants right around an 8th grade level. And if you pass your application on to somebody and they like, what does this word mean? Take the word out.
Right.
Take
Exactly.
the word out. Yeah.
In the city of Detroit, we have a lot of grants that are coming down the pipeline, rather for business, for nonprofits. What are you seeing organizations going after more than before?
Sadly, I'm seeing organizations pursue funding resources that they have no understanding of what that funding resource is. A lot of times, I'll get a call and somebody says, can you come meet with us? We want to service homeless. And I'll say, great, I'll come and meet with you. And they're like, yes, we want to make sure that they're fed, that they have a warm place to stay. I mean, the intent is wonderful. And I say, okay, well, great. Well, so how long have you guys been doing this? And they're like, no, we've never done it before. This is what we want to do.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, well, what application are you pursuing? And they have all these applications. And I said, did you read those? Most of them require you to have some relevant history to doing what it is that you're asking for money for. And they're like, but and again, great ideas, great intent, but you've got to have some skin in the game. Funding, there's very few funds out here now for people who are just starting up.
Right.
So I always say new startups, team up with somebody that's been doing this.
Yes.
And in our city and in our community, sometimes it's hard to get us to collaborate.
Yes.
But a funder wants to take that $1 and they want to give you 25 cents, and the organization down the street 25 cents, and the organization down the street 25 cents. So it only makes sense that we do what?
Collaborate. Collaboration is not a bad word, people. It is not a bad word.
It's not.
And it also allows organizations to focus on other areas. So if I do transportation and you do housing, then it helps you to focus on the housing part, and it helps me to focus on the transportation part. And so, homeless is one of my biggest pieces that I work with here in the city of Detroit. And, I've met a couple of organizations who said they do this, and then when we have the conversation, it's like, okay, you have a different perspective of what you do with homeless. But, I always say, everybody plays a part. Nobody can do it all. Right. And you have to collaborate. So, Mena, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can contact me via Facebook, Mena Davis. I'm on Facebook. And if you send me a message on Facebook, I'll, respond back fairly quickly, unless it is 3 o'clock in the morning. You can email me, Mena1107@gmail.com. And if you just really need to get in touch with me, my business number is 313-595-1562.
Say it one more time.
313-595-1562.
Well, Mena, I want to thank you for coming out today and helping us do our Facebook Live. I'm sure people, this is always one of the hot topics.
It is.
And so, I never do a hot topic without having an expert at the table. Right. And you are always my go-to expert person.
I enjoy it. And the thing that I would like to reach out and tell the community, and it goes back to, if you are looking to do grant writing, consult with an expert first. And if you don't have to, don't go in writing a check. Sit down and figure out who it is that you're talking to and what their level of expertise. The biggest thing that I have that I battle with is when there's grant writers out there who don't do what it is that they're supposed to do
Yes.
or give bad information. So
Well, we've cleaned up a lot
we've
of
been doing
people's
that,
stuff,
yeah.
a lot.
And I'm so now I'm working with a project over at the Charles Wright Museum. I'm working on their annual gala that comes
Yes.
up October the 5th. And one of the things that I've been trying to do is to get other organizations to also come into the museum and
Yes.
to utilize the museum. But most importantly, it's a good resource even if you're looking to do some grants. The museum is a part of the community.
Yes.
And so
And
we
it's
were
a
just
beautiful
talking about that.
location.
It is. So let's figure out how nonprofit organizations can come in and figure out how we can share some funding and do
Yes.
some more cultural and creative things in this beautiful city that you guys are doing such an awesome job building
Thank you,
up.
thank you, thank you. Always keep us in your prayer. I am
Always
your
do.
host, Dr. Terra DeFoe, and you've been watching On the Floor.
Thank you.